Hello everyone, this is Caleb Simpson, and you are watching my walkthrough for The Legend of Zelda, Breath of the Wild for Nintendo Wii U and Switch. In this video, we're going to be tackling one of the Divine Beasts, Vah Medoh. Now, of the 4 Divine Beasts, I do think that this is the most valuable overall because the rewards we get for it are the most useful, in my opinion, so I'd highly recommend you do this particular Divine Beast first, although you can do them in any order. Now, if you'd like to see how to get to Vah Medoh, then just refer to the previous video and I'll have a link in the description. But once you arrive, you are going to need level 2 chill resistance. Now, you can accomplish this by mix and matching either a fire weapon, the Snow Quill set, which you can purchase from Rito Village, or using food buff. So any combination of all those things, as long as you have up to level 2, you're good to go for this area. Now if you want to go the food route, I'd recommend Sun Shrooms, which you can get really easily from Gutcheck Rock and also Retsum Forest just north of the Hateno Research Lab. And if you're feeling extra spicy, you can throw in a Dragon Horn to increase the duration to 30 minutes. As a reminder, once you arrive in a Divine Beast, you will temporarily have a warp point here until we complete the dungeon. So, we can warp away and get some more prep done if you like. So before we begin, there is an optional chest you can grab real quick. Right behind us before you enter the dungeon itself, there is actually a Wall of Malice here at the tail of the bird Divine Beast, and there is a nearby eyeball that you can see very easily that you can shoot with an arrow to remove the Wall of Malice. Now, alternatively though, you can bypass it entirely by simply jumping across the gap, and you can get over here pretty easily. It's actually not that hard. Open the chest to get a sapphire, which is pretty valuable. I think this one's definitely worth it. Now, as far as these eyeballs, just so you know, you don't have to use arrows, you can use other weapons to destroy them too, so as long as we're close, you can go ahead and use a melee weapon if you want. Jump back across or destroy the eyeball to remove the Wall of Malice. Up ahead you can remove this wall by simply shooting the eyeball nearby. Alternatively, you can actually just jump across this or walk across it as well. It's definitely shallow enough to do either one of those, but you might as well destroy it just to get it out of the way. This will lead to the central chamber, which is the main room of the dungeon. So next, use the air geyser to paraglide over to the far side of the room and hop across the remaining blocks to face off against a Guardian Scout 1, which shouldn't cause you much trouble. Alternatively, for that puzzle, you can also use Magnesis to move around some of the metal blocks, and this will allow you to hop across them directly rather than using the air geyser. Once you get to the far side of the room, though, you want to interact with the distilling station to get the map for this Divine Beast. Just like all of them, we do have 5 terminals we need to activate in order to gain access to the boss. In addition to that, the dungeon map also allows us to manipulate various aspects of this Divine Beast. This particular one allows you to make the wings tilt back and forth, which allows us to gain access to various parts of the dungeon and fly to them in different ways, which is very fitting considering this is a bird and flying themed dungeon. However, the tooltip in the corner is pretty much the only hint you get that you can even do this, which I think is super vague, especially for such a core mechanic. Anyways, to activate this, all you have to do is press the minus button on your controller, and then move around with the analog stick and press A to select whichever option you want. In this case, tilt down while standing on this block, and it will slide back and forth, which allows you to reach this far wing and get into the upper portions of it. However, this is not the most efficient path. I just wanted to show that you can even do that. But what you want to do is hop down to the mid-level, where there is a optional chest we can grab here that contains some bomb arrows, which is pretty useful. After grabbing that, you can go ahead and hop down again, and you can shoot the nearby eyeball to remove the malice while you're up above and use bullet time in midair, which is pretty effective. Otherwise, you can also shoot it from in between the cracks that are in it while you're standing on the floor. Either way, you can gain access to that optional chest as well. On this lower level, you can go over to the left side where there's a Wall of Malice. You can actually walk across it, and the eyeball is on the other side. Very easy. You can just destroy that real quick to create a shortcut if you want. There's no particular reason to be doing it this way, though. I'm just mentioning the fact that you can, because I'm assuming a lot of people just assume that it's totally impassable. But you can totally walk through it if you want to. Anyways, go over to the right side instead here on the lower level, and there is an eyeball across the way that we want to shoot. Unfortunately, the carriage thing gets in the way, so you want to tilt the dungeon up, and then that way you have access to the eyeball. You want to shoot it with a sniper bow, such as the Phrenic bow, a golden bow, or a swallow bow, and then this will destroy it much more easy than using a regular bow because you have more accuracy, so you're probably not going to hit the ceiling. Anyways, shoot it with a sniper bow. This will remove the Wall of Malice. Then you want to tilt the dungeon down, and you can stand in the carriage to have it bring you over, or you can glide over either way. You can also glide over and shoot the eyeball directly. However, the carriage tends to get in the way, so it's easier to get it out of the way first. This will lead us to the farthest part of the right wing, where you can go up the ramp and you'll find one of the terminals. This will also open the nearby doors, which removes the bars that were guarding it, and this is the only way to open this door. So you can actually go to this upper portion of the wing from the central chamber that I showed earlier while standing on top of the blocks. You can tilt the dungeon to move the blocks back and forth so you can reach this. However, because the doors only open by taking the lower path anyways, it makes more sense to take the lower path first instead. The first thing you want to do in this room is shoot the eyeball on the ceiling. This will remove the malice, the spawner, so we don't have to deal with the flying skulls, but it will also make the 4th optional chest appear, which contains goodies, so be sure to grab that. Next, you want to tilt the dungeon down, and I actually did this in the wrong order here in this recording, but what you want to do is tilt the dungeon down. This will cause the hammer thing that is in the middle of the room to slide over to the left side. Once we hit this crystal switch. What the switch will do is it will open up a nearby hole in the wall, which will then move the propellers. Each one of these propellers will move a different gate, and we want to hold the far propeller in place by grabbing the block that is above it with magnesis and standing in place. What this will do is it causes the hammer to slide back and forth depending on the tilt of the dungeon, but what we need to do is it needs enough momentum to press the button. So, tilt the dungeon down and then tilt it back up again once it has reached the far side, so that it has enough momentum when it slides back the other way, so that it presses the button in completely. Alternatively, for this puzzle, you can make sure both the propellers are in the right position and then leave the dungeon level, and then you can simply use stasis on the hammer directly, and then you smack it with weapons in order to make it fly into the button really hard, and that would be another way that you could press the button instead. One other quick comment, there is another optional chest that is in this room that I forgot to grab in this recording. How you do this is make the dungeon tilt up, and then from here you can stand over to the far left side of the room, and then while it's tilted up completely, you can fly over with the paraglider over to the right and get on top of the platform where the hammer is smacking into the button. Right there, on top of that platform, there's a chest. And I believe you can also climb on top of the hammer itself and get on top of that platform, but otherwise flying is the easier way to do that. So those are the two ways to grab that, and so just make sure you grab that optional chest before you leave as well. So that's everything we had to do on the right wing, so now return to the central chamber. Now if you fall down at any point, or you just want to get there this way because it's a little bit faster regardless, you can hop down and then you can use the air geyser to get back up, this time on the back side of the bird, and then face back around so that we're facing towards the front. And from here, what we need to do next is we're working our way towards the left wing. Now in order to do that, we need to climb the nearby platform where there's a chest on top of it. Now in order to reach it, there's a couple different ways we can do this. You can tilt the bird wings either direction, and then the blocks will slide back and forth. Now while they're doing this, you can hop on them and then jump at the ladder, but it is a little bit difficult. To make this a little bit easier, all you have to do is use stasis on the block instead, so you can hold it in place, making it very easy to get on top of this ladder. Like I say, you can just jump to it directly while it's standing on it while it's moving, but it's a lot harder to do that. Now, as an alternative, a couple different ways you can do this as well is you can also use the air geyser itself because it propels you into the air for a little bit. One thing to note about that is there's a hole in the ceiling that if you touch that, it will get in the way, so you kind of have to hop pretty quick. But ideally what you do is you tilt it so that the right wing is facing up and the left wing is facing down. This means that we have more access to the ladder that is straight ahead, so it's lower, so we can grab onto it easier. But use the air geyser just to get a little bit of lift, and then you can just fly over to the platform very easily to get on top of it. As an alternative, another way you can do this is you can use the platform itself rather than using the air geyser. The tilt, you'd be surprised at how much elevation this gives you, but from here you can easily just fly over. Just watch out for the beam that's in the middle, that the rod that the platforms slide back and forth on. Those can get in the way. So those are the three different ways you can get on top of this platform. From here you can open the optional chest to get an ancient core, and also shoot the nearby eyeball to remove the malice that is blocking the nearby doorway, which gains us access to the left wing. Once inside, our first objective is to access the alcove that is on the left side that is blocked with malice. So inside, you just want to shoot the eyeball that is on the ceiling of the alcove, and this will then remove the malice as well as the spawner that is creating flying skulls so that we don't have to deal with them anymore. This will gain us access to the terminal that is in that alcove, but in order to reach it, we need to fly to it. In order to do this, you need to stand on either the left or right side on top of these platforms. Just note that if you have the angle too steep, you are going to have to tilt it the other direction real quick so that you can successfully climb it. Now, once you have enough elevation, you can just fly into the alcove and access the terminal. Looking back on this recording, I think I might have been able to just jump from this platform and reach the optional chest, but otherwise you can go ahead and use the far platform to reach it instead, which is what I did. Again, you just need to make sure you have the correct tilt in order to reach it. It's not a big deal. Generally speaking, I think that two-handers are the best weapons in the game for Breath of the Wild because claymores and stuff just hit so much harder, especially when it comes to sneak strikes and shattering frozen enemies. They do so much more damage. It's exponentially more because the multipliers are so much higher. So when you do see optional items like this where they have high bonuses for like this attack up two-hander right here, I would give this more credit, consider it more seriously compared to like a sword or a spear. Next, hop down. You want to throw a round bomb into the bugle, and this will follow the channel on the other side, and then it will roll forward as long as you have the dungeon currently tilted up. Now at this point, then you want to blow up the bomb, then put another bomb in there. It'll follow the channel. You want to hit the crystal switch, which will open up a nearby window, which causes wind to blow it over to the far left side of the room, following the channel once again. Now there's another cracked wall over there which you can blow up with the bomb once more. This will reveal a large metal ball. Now you want to tilt the dungeon back down. This will cause the metal ball to roll over to this side so we can have access to it. Now through this electric field window, you can use magnesis on the metal ball and then move it over to the right side of the room. Place it in the channel so that it's locked in place, and then you want to tilt the dungeon back the other way once again. This will cause it to roll forward, and it will land into the button that is over there on the far side of the room. But this will remove the bars that are on the doorway, which gains us access to that same room where you'll find one of the terminals. There's only one more terminal left to get, and it's also on this left wing, but it's right below us, so how do we get there? Now, one of the easiest ways to get there is to simply get on top of the roof. You can take the central air geyser that's in the middle room, and then you can go onto the left wing and then jump off the front, towards the front side of it. It's easier to do when you have it tilted up, but then from there you can then sail down to the terminal that's underneath. Alternatively, we can just use the window that we created right here, which takes us to the exact same location. Hop out the window, use your paraglider, and sail towards the middle of the wing, which will take us to the alcove. Now, as a quick comment though, again, this is a little bit easier to do if you have the current tilt is set to up. This is the most efficient path, and at this point we have accessed all 5 of the terminals, so all we need to do is return to the central room. Now, at this point, to get back there though, there is a trick that you can use to get back there really fast, and that is that if you tilt the dungeon and you fall into the abyss while it's in the middle of tilting, then rather than appearing back on the platform you jumped from, you will actually appear in the central room. I think this is because the game is freaking out because it doesn't know exactly where you were standing, or it hasn't like finalized its positioning and stuff, and so you would appear inside the wall of the dungeon or something like that. So to avoid weird glitches, they just make you appear in the central chamber instead. So you'll lose a heart if you do this, if you willingly jump into the abyss while you're tilting, but it will allow you to get back there very quickly. So otherwise though, all you have to do is tilt back the other direction and then sail back towards the center of the dungeon. Now at this point you can shoot the eyeballs to remove the malice that are nearby, and this will gain access to the central room. As I was saying earlier, you could have just walked across this malice earlier and then blown up that eyeball in order to gain access to this shortcut. However, there wasn't particularly a reason to do it earlier. I think the path that I took is far more efficient as far as the amount of time we spent doing all this stuff. So I think this is a much more efficient order. But anyways, next you can continue over to the left side where there is another air geyser here that is blocked by some malice. To destroy the eyeball, you can take this air geyser back up to the boss chamber, which is where our next destination is. To give you a point of reference as far as where our current location is, I'm going to hop down in this hole just so you can see where we are. This is back in the central chamber, which is exactly where you would appear if you fell into the abyss earlier, like I was semi-recommending. So hop into the air geyser. This will take us up to the boss chamber, which is where we're going to confront the boss of this dungeon. If you were unable to do so, that is because you have not unlocked all of the terminals. They are glowing orange points that are on your minimap as well, so you should easily be able to tell where they are, but as far as how to unlock them, just refer to the earlier points of this video where I have them clearly marked with timestamps. While you can tilt the dungeon to give yourself a little bit of an advantage because you can jump from a higher elevation and thus you have more bullet time and thus more time to shoot arrows, it's not really worth it because we have air geysers that will accomplish the same thing, and if you have the dungeon tilted, then what that means is the little dips and valleys that are in this boss arena will be too steep for you to climb at certain points, and you might just end up getting yourself killed as you're trying to run away. So I recommend you just leave the arena level. We only need 2 chill resistance to survive here, so just 2 pieces of the snow quill set is fine. Meanwhile, your third slot can be the champion's tunic or anything else that gives you a ton of armor or increases your damage. As far as food buffs, you can either have chill resistance, you can have attack, or you can have defense. Now, defense is actually incredibly powerful because the tough buff, if you have tier 3, will basically reduce all your damage down to quarter heart anyway, and then you're practically invulnerable. Another thing that's sort of fun about that is if your defense is all tied up in your food buff, then you can have the snow quill for most of this just so you're not taking damage, and then once you get close, you can switch to an offense set before you start wailing on him. How this boss works is it will teleport around the arena, becoming a blue ball of energy, during which point all your attacks will pass through it, then it will reappear somewhere else, and you can attack it once again once it's solid. Now, you can use your ranged attacks if you are too far away. Otherwise, you can get close. Using your melee weapons will allow you to do a lot more damage, generally speaking. So basically, what you want to do is every time the boss teleports, you want to run towards the blue ball and stand right next to it and then start smacking the boss as soon as he appears. Otherwise, if the boss teleports somewhere awkward, or it's too far away, or it teleports up into the sky instead, you want to shoot it with arrows instead. You can use a variety of different arrows. Bomb arrows are by far the most effective. Otherwise, if you don't have enough bomb arrows or you don't want to spend that many rupees on it because they're expensive, you can use regular arrows instead. And what you want to do with that is hit him in the eye that's on the center of its mask. And what this will do is it will interrupt its attack animation, which is really, really powerful. So you can just use a regular arrow, and yes, getting crits on its eye will make you do more damage, but we don't really care about that. We're more interested in interrupting its animation. So I'd recommend you actually use a sniper bow. You'll do less damage, but this will make it more guaranteed that you can hit the eye a lot easier. The other advantage of this is that forcing the boss to stop attacking will then cause it to teleport again, so we're not wasting time waiting for the boss to finish his whole attack cycle. Instead, he'll just immediately teleport somewhere else, so we can hopefully get him in a better position where we can do even more damage. During the first phase, the boss has 2 different attacks, one of which is to shoot with its gun arm. Now, this takes it several seconds for it to charge up, and then it will shoot 4 volleys, which can be easily avoided by either using your shield, which wastes durability, or you can hide behind the central mechanism or some of the nearby pillars, or you can simply walk side to side. If you're doing this, I highly recommend you try shooting him in the eye at the same time. Now, if the boss does this animation and you can get close enough, this is awesome because he'll just start shooting in your direction, but because the arm is so long and you're within its arm length, it can't actually hit you anyways because it's shooting right past you. So you can just stand there and smack away. The boss's second attack is to swing its regular arm, which causes a tornado to appear. Now these are somewhat hard to avoid, especially if you rush forward and already commit to a regular attack, which is probably your natural instinct because you're trying to take down the boss as soon as possible. However, this will probably just get you killed. So instead, what's better is actually to either swing a little wide of it, ideally on the left side, because the right side of the boss is where the tornado will appear from, and then try and swing around behind and attack it before the boss disappears. Otherwise, just rush forward, and if you see a tornado, then run away, and if it's not a tornado, then you can run in for the kill. For the second phase, the boss will then summon a bunch of these flying little missile things, which will empower his ranged attacks. So the first attack is that they will all gather around its gun hand, and it will shoot out a powerful blast after several seconds that shoots very, very quickly and does a lot of damage. You can just hide behind the central control mechanism to avoid this, but otherwise shooting him in the eye will interrupt it. The second attack is the boss deploying the missiles as a bunch of stationary satellites, which it will then fire at, which causes the attacks to bounce back and forth, and finally the satellites themselves will unleash a flurry of attacks at you from multiple directions. These are pretty fast and they're somewhat hard to avoid, especially if the satellites are directly above you because you can't hide behind cover. So you want to either get further away, or you want to just keep moving so that the attacks cannot hit you, or you want to attack the boss directly, because if you do so, you can interrupt the attack entirely and prevent it from happening. The missiles can be destroyed, however, just note that they are invulnerable when the boss is teleporting, so you have to wait till the boss is solid before you attack them, otherwise you will not be able to hurt them. The two ways to fight them is to either use stasis to stun them for a few brief moments and then quickly attack them before the stun wears off, or to use the air geysers to your advantage by using bullet time. There are two advantages to breaking the missiles. One is that the boss will no longer have empowered attacks, so that makes them do a lot less damage and stuff, and it's a lot easier to avoid, which is great, until he resummons them anyways. And the second advantage is that when he does resummon them, it takes a very long time, very long animation, and he's vulnerable for that entire duration. So if you can run up to the boss and smack him while he's doing that, you can probably complete an entire phase right there. However, in my opinion, I think the missiles are a huge waste of time, because if instead you attack the boss directly, then you will counter all of his empowered attacks anyways by shooting him in the eye to interrupt those animations, which means the missiles do absolutely nothing. And the final attack the boss has is a Guardian Laser, which can be reflected with a shield bash just like all of the other Guardians in the game. Overall, the safest, fastest, and easiest way to kill this boss is definitely going to be to use bomb arrows in particular. You can use other arrows as well, bomb arrows are just the most effective, and you get a bunch of freebies both before you start this dungeon as well as in the dungeon itself. A couple things to know about them though is that most arrows will actually do the physical damage of whatever your bow says, and then they also do the elemental damage on top of that if you are using an elemental arrow. Bomb arrows, on the other hand, are completely separate than that. They always do 50 damage regardless of the type of bow that you're using. So even something terrible like a Boko bow will still do 50 damage if I have bomb arrows equipped. Multiple instances of damage in Breath of the Wild will not apply the damage if they are too close together. So if you want to use a multi-shot bow, you can do that, just make sure you stand really far away, because if you're too close, you might only do the damage of one bomb arrow. So a 3 times bow, you want to stand really far back. I found that a 5 times and a 7 times bow did not work at all. I only got the damage of like 2 bomb arrows, so I wasted all the other ones. It was terrible, just absolutely awful. So I think 3-shot is kind of the sweet spot if you want to do that. Damage multipliers in Breath of the Wild stacks. If you want to just ignore the cold entirely, you can use an attack buff, then use the appropriate armor that will make a specific weapon type do a little bit more damage, and those things will multiply off each other, which means that you hit the boss really, really hard. So even though we are taking cold damage, it doesn't really matter, because we're going to kill the boss before he can react anyway. Here's most of a battle just to give you kind of all those tips combined. So here's the boss just started. I'm going to run over to his orb. Does he use his regular hand to summon a tornado? No, he does not, so I don't have to dodge. So I'm just staying really close while he's shooting with his gun hand, and I can just attack him directly instead. This immediately takes me through the first phase because I'm also wearing the Master Sword. The Master Sword does increase damage versus Guardians and Blights, so it does 60 damage rather than the normal 30, and it also attacks very fast. So here we are in second phase. He summons the missiles. Generally speaking, I think they're a waste of your time, but for this recording, I was trying to show this combat with the method of killing them. So I was trying to kill them as soon as possible. I jumped in the air geyser. I was ignoring the fact that they were attacking. I was like, I'm just going to kill them as soon as possible. It'll be great. But then they just totally mauled me. I should have just dropped down and run around in circles until the attack was over and then attacked them. I also didn't realize at the time that the missiles were invulnerable while the boss was teleporting. Now I am aware of that, so I realized this was apparently a mistake. So I wasn't able to attack them after he reappeared, though I was able to kill them just fine, and it was super easy. So bullet time is great because you can kill a whole bunch of them at once. One quick note about that is this boss is a lot easier the more stamina you have. So if you're pretty early game and you only have one stamina wheel, then this boss would be quite a bit harder for tactics like that, specifically. Here I was expecting him to start shooting at me, so I was trying to preemptively get in spots where I could shoot him in the eye to interrupt his attack. Didn't actually work because he was just apparently moving over. Quickly ran away once I realized he was going to attack me from this direction instead, and it was totally fine. So at this point, though, would you just keep stalling around for a little bit, and eventually he will go end up on the ground again, either to attack like normal or to resummon the missiles. So you can destroy the missiles if you want to. I still think they're a waste of time because you can just interrupt his animations until he gets down low, but it's still just fine, and using bullet time makes this quite a bit easier. A couple other final notes about this boss is that if you can get close enough, then even the tornadoes cannot hit you. So if you're standing like literally like hugging his torso before you start attacking, then he can't hit you with that either. It appears behind you and then just keeps traveling in that direction, which is awesome. So another little tip to get close to him is to use stasis on the boss itself, because this will allow you to give you that just those few precious seconds that you need to get that close so you can hug his torso before you start attacking, to guarantee that even the tornadoes cannot attack you. One final note is that in Master Mode, this boss will continually regenerate life after you have not hit it for a while, so it's very important that you constantly poke it with arrows to keep it from regenerating. So one quick note at this point, if you did not pick up this heart container after defeating the boss and you just went ahead and interacted with the console straight ahead, then it will kick us out of the dungeon and we would no longer have access to this dungeon at all. So you cannot return here after you do that. So if you are worried about that because you did not pick up the heart container, don't worry, because all you have to do is warp to the dungeon. We don't actually have the ability to enter the dungeon anymore. However, the heart container will appear on the ground if you did not pick it up at this point.
Well, I'll be plucked. You defeated him, eh? Who would have thought? Well done. I suppose I should thank you now that my spirit is free. This returns Medoh back to its rightful owner. Don't preen yourself just for doing your job. I do suppose you've proven your value as a warrior worthy of my unique ability, the sacred skill that I have dubbed Revali's Gale! It's now time to move on and start making preparations for Medoh's strike on Ganon. But only if you think you'll still need my help while you're fighting inside Hyrule Castle. Feel free to thank me now. Or, never mind, just go. Your job is far from finished, you know. The princess has been waiting an awfully long time. Medoh's sights are now set. You'll have a precise bead on Ganon from this vantage point. And when the time is right, give him everything you've got. Now we wait for that perfect moment. Meadow, we've been artfully patient for the last 100 years. I doubt you'll suffer a feather over a few more moments. After all these years, I simply must admit the truth. Even without the power of flight, Link made his way to this divine beast and accomplished something that even I could not. Guess I was wrong about how lucky he would be. I hope that luck holds out, Link, for everyone's sake.
After completing a Divine Beast, you will get the champion ability for that particular dungeon, so in this case we get Revali's Gale, which is the most useful of all the various abilities in the game by far. Now, for this reason, I highly recommend that you do Vah Medoh first of the different Divine Beasts, and what this allows you to do is you can press the jump button and hold it, and then Link will charge it up on the ground, and then you can release to create an updraft that will take you to the sky! This is incredibly useful for exploring Hyrule, but it's also useful in the rain in particular, so you don't have to climb big cliffs, but you can also use it inside dungeons and shrines, which allows you to break some of the puzzles that they expect you to do, so it's kind of funny. Just one more tool for our tool belt to break the game. As a reminder, in case you didn't know, if you are waiting for the cooldown of Revali's Gale, or you just don't need quite as much distance, you can also create your own smaller updraft whenever you like by simply lighting 4 pieces of wood on fire at once with a fire weapon, or you can also accomplish the same thing with a single spicy pepper. Just throw that on the ground, light it on fire, poof, you create an updraft whenever you want. Anyway, after you completed the dungeon, you want to return to Rito Village, go to the very top and speak with the Chief Canelli here, who will then gift you with the Great Eagle Bow, which is one of the best bows in the entire game. It's a 3-time sniper bow that has pretty decent damage, and if you can get all 3 shots with regular arrows to headshot somebody, it does an insane amount of damage. Super good for killing Lionels and stuff. Really amazing bow. If it wears out, you can return to Rito Village and craft another one. Now, most of the champion weapons are just kind of okay damage-wise. They're pretty decent, but they're not as good as some other weapons in the game, but I still feel sad about breaking them. So one of the things I like to do is I collect them and I put them in my house in Hatino on the wall. So there's different things you can put there. I like to put the champion weapons. Whatever you want to do, though, I will save them for a rainy day. This is actually one of the exceptions where I think this is a really useful bow. So if you're going to use one of the champion weapons in particular, this is the best one by far, in my opinion. Alright, that concludes this Divine Beast. So thanks so much for watching my video. Check out my other ones. Subscribe, all that kind of stuff. As always, you guys are awesome. You have an amazing day. And I'll see you next time.